I almost never do this. It's so rare for me to make a video about a deck that I've actually recently covered, but my continued success with Goon Knight has me really taken aback because nobody seems to believe me when I say that it's the best deck in the game, and I'm serious. At the time of recording, this list, since I highlighted it in my last video, has racked up 410 plays in top 10% infinite, and it has a 67% win rate, the highest of any deck with more than 100 plays in top 10% infinite in the entire game. In my own personal experience, it has been the best deck I have played in a very long time. I have a record of 40-14 with the list in very high infinite. And I think the most consterning thing about it, consterning, not a real word, I was going for a combination of like consternation. The thing that causes me the most consternation about it is that every time I tell one of my friends that this deck is amazing and one of, if not the best decks in the game, none of them believe me because the pedigree of this deck is so minimal. The biggest problem that decks like this have had in the past, and previous versions of Goon Knight specifically, is that they simply do not have the power output necessary to compete. And they also existed in metagames where there were other decks that were better at doing what it was doing, and decks that were very good against it. Typically, this deck is best into sort of slower developing mid-range strategies as well as into Aurashem. And right now, those are the two decks everybody is playing. Everyone is playing these anti-venom mid-range strategies. Guess what that guy costs, by the way? People are playing a bunch of Gore. Guess what that guy costs, by the way? And then people are playing a bunch of Aurashem, which is as good of a matchup in this deck is as good of a matchup in Aurashem that has ever existed. People are going to look at this and say, oh, that's because of Darkhawk and Cassandra. It is sort of, but it's also because stripping resources away from Aurashem is the best way to combat them, which is part of why when you're playing Aurashem, one of the best cards you can have is Agent Coulson, because it gives you the ability to leverage your energy advantage. This card takes away the ability to leverage your energy advantage, this deck, I should say, by getting rid of the cards that you are going to spend that energy on. That, in addition to it being a Darkhawk deck, in addition to it being a Cassandra deck, makes it the freest matchup into Aurashem that there ever has been. Obviously, when we're card gamers, we talk about free matchups. What we actually mean is like 60-40 or 65-35. That is the case. But I do think that people are too used to expecting like actual literal free wins, and so maybe I should dial down the hyperbole. It's a very favored matchup, in my opinion, into both of the decks that are extremely common right now, Aurashem stuff and Anti-Venom stuff, in part because of just how powerful your nut draw of Fenris, Goon Knight, Proxima can be against those lists. It is just nearly unbeatable into a variety of things. Now, what is it that this deck really doesn't want to see? Well, the basic answer is Bounce, right? Bounce is a deck that can go very over the top of this deck that has basically no good targets for your Fenris Wolf to bring back, and it's not really like Moon Knight is going to be disrupting them all that much because of the basically no good targets issue. You are very good into decks that are playing 4s and 6s, and there's a lot of those. We talked about the Anti-Venom stuff, but even Wiccan stuff. Discarding a Wiccan, obviously ridiculous. Discarding a Magneto, obviously ridiculous. Like, that kind of stuff is what your good matchup is, and your bad matchups are bounce stuff and things that aren't really going to have good targets for that, and there are not a lot of those in the metagame right now, fundamentally. If they start coming back in force, you're going to run into some really awkward situations. Move bounce especially makes this deck look very, very stupid. I'm not saying that is a forever situation, but that is certainly how I feel about it right now. There are certain matchups where this deck isn't good, but if you are facing a bunch of Aurashem, a bunch of Anti-Venom, this is as good as it gets. It is that strong, in my opinion. Blanking your opponent's draws has always been an important part of this deck. Yes, there is the potential that this card puts a rock into your opponent's deck, which they then draw, which makes your Black Bolt hit the rock, which sucks, right? But it is fundamentally a thing that is worth doing. What this deck is trying to do is drag your opponent's output as low as possible. That means blanking draws with rocks. It means blanking draws With Black Widow, it means blanking draws by discarding them, and sometimes those plans run into each other, but sometimes, most of the time, in fact, they do not, and they are able to compound and stack on each other and strip your opponent of the resources that they would need in order to go over the top of you. Card is a 1/5. That's really all I need to say about Big Bob at this point. I think you know what the replacements are. You go for like a utility card, Silver Sable, Iceman, or Spider-Ham, or Nico Minoru. All of those, I think, are appropriate. This is obviously the best of them, though, especially because you are so often a 5+1 deck on the final turn of the game, which means that this card can serve as your budget stature in a pinch. One of the major issues that Goon Knight had previously was that there were plenty of games where you just didn't have a functional draw because you drew a bunch of 1s and it wasn't very good. The deck couldn't run any 2s. This is a 2 worth running, and it's not just a 2 worth running, it's like one of the best cards in the entire deck. Playing this into Moon Knight is setting your opponent up to get heinously blown out. This card is bringing back Alioths, it is bringing back Malekiths, it is bringing back Anti-Venoms, it is bringing back Magnetos. It is just enormous and huge. And frankly, there is an argument, I think, to try to get rid of the Darkhawk synergy in here and run things like Gladiator just to make this card straight up better. Fenris Wolf is a big boon to a deck like this because the problem with Moon Knight has always been one of its own output. You'd strip your opponent down to limited cards, but they'd still be able to beat you because you just didn't have enough points. Fenris Wolf brings the beef. Cassandra Nova is just a nice card to have in here. Far from required, I would say, but is useful just in the sense of you are a Korg deck, you are a Black Widow deck, which means your Cassandras will be good later into the game than many other decks that play Cassandra. And of course, it's very nice to have in a world where people are playing Arishem and Thanos. And mostly, this is just a good card to curve out. Again, it fills what you need. You try to drag your opponent's point output down. Cassandra can help with that. She's also quite solid as a body on her own. Fits with the ethos of the deck and is a pretty solid 3-drop that happens to be very good in specific matchups like Arishem and Thanos or Arathanos. Gambit is kind of a sneaky, amazing card in here because he makes it so hard for your opponent to ever feel confident. You can always YOLO out of situations with a Gambit. You are very often going to be live, like maybe 3 out of 7 or 8 targets with a Gambit will actually win you the game, and you're going to play for that because if you are in for a certain amount of cubes, it becomes a little more optimal to play for that 3 out of 8 than it does to retreat. Gambit just does stuff, but also, and this is really important, additional Fenris Wolf usage. That can be really useful if you aren't doing the other things that can proc Fenris Wolf in this deck. Juggernaut is your 3 energy Alioth. You get to play it because it does not get discarded by your Goon Knight. Very powerful and straightforward card. This is almost never a card you're actually going to be curving out. And a lot of your late game is choosing between 5+1 and 3+3. So typically you have these situations where you have to pick that. Sometimes, of course, it's 3+1+1 with a Stature and a Hydra Bob and a Juggernaut. That's usually a very powerful play as well. This card is elite, but it is also sort of specifically good at winning one location. So do make sure that you have ways of winning the other ones. Your nut draw of this card followed, or a Fenris Wolf followed by this card discarding Proxima Midnight, is such an incredible point swing. Your opponent is discarding a card. You are getting a free 7 points. You are also bringing back their discarded card with the Fenris Wolf. That is snappable against most decks, as long as what you think you're discarding is actually going to be important enough. And against most decks, it probably will be. Against Arishem, that's a snap. Against Anti-Venom, that's a snap. It just is exactly that good. And I'm not saying it's infallible, but you are going to be favored when you do that, and that's when you have to snap stuff. This is a very strong snap, and I think one of the things that this deck previously lacked was the ability to have these bully snaps. It had a very poor snap equity because it was so much about getting rid of your opponent's resources, but you weren't always going to be able to be sure that you were going to be able to do that effectively until it was happening. And so if you're snapping on turn 6 with this deck, it's usually very easy for your opponent to know whether they're supposed to leave or supposed to stay. which is why it had such a poor cube profile, but now it has a straight up nut draw that'll beat most decks, and that is extremely powerful. I realize you've probably heard this, but please make sure you order your Black Widows correctly. If you are discarding stuff from your opponent, use her after. Also, I typically try to use her on turn 5 in combination with a Black Bolt because I don't want to give my opponent the opportunity to make the read that they can keep the Widow's Bite in hand if I use it on turn 4 to get that discarded instead. It hasn't happened yet, but I don't want to give that opportunity. It might be like better even if they decide to do that, but it is something that sticks in my mind just a little bit in terms of how this works, because if you use it on turn 4, it goes into hand on turn 5. If they make that read, you are discarding the Widow's Bite instead. And that's really bad for you, so I typically try to order it such that I use Black Bolt first, and then this on turn 5. They discard a card, then don't draw a card for a crucial turn 6. That's a quite powerful line of play. She's a very good part of your nut draw. There are also situations where you are going to set up such that you're going to try to gambit a Proxima out of your hand. That's usually a double RNG kind of thing, because a lot of the time when you're in those spots, you're going to have another card in hand. You're going to be 50-50ing for the Proxima. There's going to be some times where you just have to like make plays like that and be like, yeah, this will probably work out. Hopefully it'll go. But most of the time what you're trying to do is hit this card with Moon Knight. This does mean that a lot of the time in sequencing, like let's say you have a Fenris Wolf, you have a Black Widow, you don't have a Moon Knight, you're going to run the Black Widow out there, wait on seeing if you can draw the Proxima or the Moon Knight, whichever one that you're missing. Stuff like that's going to matter because you're going to want to get the value out of this card if you can, and Moon Knight is a guaranteed way of doing that. Hawk might be the weakest part of the deck. You could definitely convince me to try to replace him with Gladiator, but I have enjoyed the ability to go taller. One of the issues this deck has traditionally had is a lack of ability to go truly tall, a lot of predictable point outputs on the final turn of the game, where it's like, all right, you're playing a 7 or in something else, right? And it's like, all right, I like the ability to actually go tall. It can be relevant depending on what the other locations are. And we're not as bad at making this guy matter as you think. We have a Korg. We, of course, have a Black Widow. We are going to be able to potentially block off 2 draws, which is going to make him a pretty relevant threat a lot of the time. I will say, I have also considered switching him with Claw, but I think the prevalence of Arishem has made me feel like, well, if I think they're about equivalent, I might as well just play the one that beats Arishem. He is a very bad Fenris Wolf enabler. He's almost never going to hit anything relevant there, but what he will do is simply strip your opponents of options. A lot of decks right now are about playing a big guy and a couple small guys late in the game. You have Wiccan decks who are built almost entirely to enable you to play a 6-drop alongside a couple small guys. Getting rid of those small guys does actually meaningfully hurt them. This card is relevant against Arishem. Again, a deck that is trying to leverage extra energy to do stuff to you. But one space where this card really shines is against the card Anti-Venom, because it basically forces them to play the Anti-Venomed card on turn 5, because if they don't, it's going away forever. Black Bolt is excellent in that matchup. Stature is your 1 for your 5+1. She's a 1/7 if you are doing anything close to reasonable in this deck. A lot of the times where she's not a 1/7, it's not really going to matter because it means you didn't do anything for a large portion of the game anyway. Basically, she's amazing, excellent pairing with Black Bolt and Moon Knight, and an extremely reasonable card that I think is pretty close to honestly being a make or break piece of this deck. All right, y'all, I hope you enjoyed that look. I realize that the reason people might not be taking me seriously about this deck, maybe it's my fault, right? Maybe I did too many jokes in the first video and I wasn't talking enough about how awesome the deck was, and people were like, oh, haha, Cam. But seriously, I'm 40-14. The deck has a 67% win rate at top 10% infinite. That is the highest of any 12-card deck in the game at the time of recording, by a lot, by the way. And it is, I think, terminally underrated, and I hope it will not be after this video. Let's get into the gameplay. As before, I'm gonna let you in on a little secret. Even if we did, we would not be allowed to tell you. Even if we did, we would not be allowed to tell you. We all sign very strict NDAs. So at a certain point, even asking that question is like... I think I stick in it. God, which direction? Which way, Western men? We picked the right direction. Oh, we picked the right direction by a lot. Is Cath even worth playing? Wait. Oh, shit. Maybe I'm just stupid. Yeah. I might just be being stupid. Maybe stacking the stature is just always better here. Did you get A-Tree? I didn't get it yet, no. We actually play around them playing around our shit here, right? Are we like clawing or some shit? What's happening? Surely there's no way to beat just the Juggernaut, right? This always happens, or the Juggernaut always happens. Is there a way they can actually beat it? I fucking doubt it. Random Doom. Yeah. Yep. Ball left. I was contemplating that they could be doing that, but I think they're not because they're playing. Always a good game when my opponents win. Never a good game when I win. I would GG. I'm him. People say that a lot, but it's rarely true. Mm-hmm. That can't be good. They're actually never seen Black Widow 4 or 5. I'm not sure. We get rid of the Ghost Spider. They've discarded Ghost Spider. Wait, without Ghost Spider, how are they supposed to get anything onto Baxter Building? Am I missing something? Without Ghost Spider, how do they get anything onto Baxter? Oh, that's this turn. Doctor Strange. Yeah, Doctor Strange would do it. Okay, I've got a strategy. Boom! Strategied. They got strategied on. Gambit, you're the light of my life. Made a name for himself. Yeah, as the light of my life. My lover forever. My boy Gambito. You are my hero forever. Ravone. Haha, wait! It doesn't. Clever. Some cool shit happening there. Ow. Probably a good idea, though. Throw a rock. As always, Gambit's just gonna save our entire asses. Surely. Right? Surely Gambit just wins us the game. Surely Gambit just wins us the game. Yeah, I don't know. Okay, that's as bad as it could have gotten, I think. Now we're going to lose if they have any points on the... Oh! Tiebreak win. Okay, we're good. Love that. Juggernaut was on their copycat, which is bad for us for reasons that I think should be clear. We do not want that to happen. A good idea, you said play Black Hole for you activate Black Widow. No, people do it all the time. People do it literally all the time. Oh, that's not good. If I go Darkhawk and Fenris the thing back, it works, right? Better than whatever else I'd get, I'm assuming. Digging the playlist? Thank you. I'm not sure how I can lose here. Maybe they just have big guys? I don't know. Works for me. They have one card in there. We did it. It was not Magneto. Dude, the Spectrum guy fucking shut up. We know it was that guy. Stop reminding me of my trauma. Stop reminding me of all the pain. I don't want to hear it. You're net zero on your trauma? No, because when you lose to them, it's worse than when you beat them. God damn it. What if I just skip? I'd want to do that next turn, right? But then it would make me not want to play this. I'd be mad if this happened to me. I'd be fucking mad if this happened to me. I'd be so pissed. Good point on the order, chat. Got my ass. You mentioned Goring Clog. Find anything good? I haven't played Goring Clog. I will say that much. Our Lady of Saints. Okay, so we have Moon Knight Black Bolt. I suppose It's probably better to play Black Widow first. Just in case we draw Proxima, right? Yeah, Cam Worst is a guy we know, actually. We want the 4 over here in case we end up snapping. Mm-hmm. Damn. Damn. Oh, we lost. Negasonic literally the only card that could beat us there, I think. Wait, it doesn't work? Oh my god. It's not there? Oh my god, it's here? Oh my god, right, it's like Magneto. Doom 2099 himself is interesting as in broke. I mean, yeah, he could be. You could very easily convince me that Doom 2099 is broken. That's just very helpful and nice of them. I want to do it. That was probably our worst hit. It kind of depends on where the buffs went and what they're on right now. If they have something that's 9, I think we're in a lot of trouble. That's 7, not 9. Okay, it's a tiebreaker? A tiebreaker that we win! Look at that! I wonder what they got of mine. I really hope it's not my Juggernaut, but it very easily could be. It was my Bob. Was my Bobberts. It was the Bob. Whoa, they just don't have a asserter in hand? So this couldn't have been a 10 then. That has to cost 3. Won't activate, but I'll pet the dog. Okay, yeah, I was figuring it would be like something along those lines. We just beat that with numbers. Like, our numbers are just simply larger on the right lane there. Also,